I have Andrea Brambila, who is a therapist and a fellow mom, content creator, Brambila_bits on Instagram. But we did a separate interview back, I think it went live in early July, to talk about all things like kids and screens. And we focused a lot on screen time. That was a really great conversation. But we're back because I was in DC a couple of weeks ago doing some advocacy stuff for kids' online safety. And Andrea, you messaged me saying I need you to break down for me how to get involved in this. And I thought this was a perfect conversation to bring to the podcast because I know that there are other parents trying to figure out how to help everyone be safer online and their own kids too. Yeah. So yeah, why don't we just kick it off with, what do you want to ask me? I mean, I have a few notes about what I've generally learned, but I want to know what you've thought of and where you want to focus. And please remember, there's no dumb questions because I am new to this as well, but I want to share what I've learned.
Yeah. So I guess my first question, and I think kind of a good place to kick it off is, I think a lot of parents feel very overwhelmed and even just out of the loop of what is going on with legislation and who owns what and what are the rules. So, if you have any tips in terms of are there accounts that you follow to kind of stay, keep a pulse on what's going on, or how are you coming by this information? Because you were posting a lot about I think it was COSA. I was I didn't even have any idea that this was something that was even in the field right now.
Yeah. So why don't I open up my emails and I'm going to see which ones I like for keeping me updated on this kind of thing. And it's hard because I do have now a lot of contacts that are lobbyists or attorneys or just parent advocates who are emailing me things. So I do have more information than the general public. And there is not one great place to get updates on just kids online safety stuff. You can sign up for an email list. And so Punchbowl is a legislative newsletter. Most of that stuff is not relevant. And it's a lot of federal stuff. But I do scan it to look for COSA or kids online safety. I'll do a quick control F to figure out if the stuff I want to know is in there. Project Liberty is a group that is doing a great job sending maybe weekly emails about what's going on in this space. So that one is one you can sign up for. I wish I had maybe I need to create it.
I think so. Yeah.
So my weekly updates, I try to, on Fridays, I release something called a Big Tech Gut Check, where I try to do an overview of what's happening in the social media, online safety, big tech space, and just only for what parents need to know. So that is where I would send people, I think, for a 10-minute snippet of what happened that week. Also on my Instagram, anything that hits, I'm trying to get it out same day, to let you know what's going on. So as far as getting updates coming to you, that's what I would say. But there's a lot you can do on your own time to kind of educate yourself on.
So what kind of things do you recommend?
So if you want to know about what laws currently exist to protect your kids online, nothing federally, literally nothing. The last law that was passed to protect kids online was passed in 1996. So that's why we so desperately need a new federal law. And people have been putting a lot of energy into the Kids Online Safety Act, which we can talk about. But on a state level, there are some new laws that are getting passed across the states. And so you can go to, I would go to, for California, ca.gov, and I would search for the legislation that's been passed. And I think it's probably organized by topic. But you can review what your state has passed recently. You can also review what bills have been proposed but not passed yet. And that's a good way to find out what bills have been proposed but not passed. And maybe if you read the bill, some are long and some are not. If you actually read a law, sometimes you're oh, this isn't as overwhelming as I thought. For example, here in California, we just passed the Phone Free Schools Act. It's a page and a half, 2 pages. It's really not that complicated. So yeah, I think know that on a federal level, there's nothing right now to protect our kids. And that is because, in case you're wondering why, that's because big tech, all these tech companies spend so much money, millions and millions of dollars every quarter to lobby against all these bills that would protect our kids. They don't want these they don't want to be regulated because then they're going to
Yeah.
make less money, right? So that's what I'm trying to fight against. And that federal, like we can state laws are great, but we need like a federal standard so that everybody is protected and every state isn't different. And that's even harder for the tech companies to follow, like different, like where's the state line,
Individual,
and they
yeah.
have to do different like laws or different regulations per state. Like that's confusing.
I
So
don't even know how you would,
I
from
don't
like
know.
a compliance standpoint.
Yeah, that's way more confusing. You would think the tech companies would just want a federal standard.
Yeah.
That was probably all really confusing. So let me know what clarifying questions.
No, so I think that's a good place to start. And then, so if there are proposed bills or proposed legislation that is taking place, like how can parents, I mean, like I know, like when I think back to like my my government class in high school, it was like you can write, I know you can write your senator, I know you can write your governor. And I think that there are, at least in Texas, I think there's requirements that like they have to read a certain percentage of like letters that are written in, which is I've always found really interesting. But outside of just like contacting individual representatives, what are other ways that parents can sort of get involved if they are interested in it?
Yeah. So talking to other parents or other community members about it, creating, I mean, if you're really passionate about it, get together a bunch of people. You can write a letter all together and all sign it and send it on. Like with 100 signatures, that's going to get a lot more, or even 50, that's going to get a lot more attention. But you're right that every single contact, like they log it, especially if it's custom written, like not a template that you found somewhere. Like you actually even write like a couple sentences about why that's important to you. So on a federal level, it really means a lot when you figure out who your representative is in the House in your district, which really only represents a few, like I mean, it's by population, I think, but my representative represents like maybe 6 cities that are all around me. And so like I'm important to them when I show up at their office, and you have more of a say, or I write in or call in. But so there's definitely contacting your representative. There's just letting your community know. So if it's on social media or who people you talk to in your day-to-day life, and just understanding that like our voices as parents and constituents in a district mean a lot to the people that we elect to make decisions for us. So if we just go through life having no idea what our representative is doing or voting on, and having no say in it, we're not doing our job too as like citizens in this democracy. Like I feel like they want to hear from us and know what's important to us to inform their decisions. And if they're making bad decisions that you're not happy with, like we're going to elect in somebody else to do that job. I just remembered that I saw a new study where the United States were ranked from best to worst for protecting kids online, from 1 to 51 or whatever. And literally California, where I live, is 50th. And like for like worst, I think one state is behind. I'll share that in the episode notes because I think that's a good standard. You can check your state to be like, based on all these different factors, where you rank, and that might light a fire under you. Like I'm 50th, that sucks. And I think our governor, Gavin Newsom, has been passing more bills in this area. So that's an interesting resource to start from. And then I think educating yourself on what bills have been proposed, contacting your representative, talking to your community, doing a letter writing campaign, having an event, like inviting people over to talk about this kind of stuff. There's a great organization called MAMA, Mothers Against Media Addiction, that's bringing together people in different communities. They're creating local chapters that are all talking about screen time, phones at school, social media harms. Go to, I think it's joinmama.org. That's another resource for parents to find people around them that are passionate about these topics and want to get together and talk about it and work towards legislation that could help protect our kids.
Awesome. So I was just curious, and obviously share however much or however little you'd like, but what was your sort of experience like? And I know that you have shared some snippets on your page when you were working with like the COSA Act in DC. Like what was sort of like your experience and what was your role there?
So the first time I went to DC, I think I was going for an event anyway, but a parent that I had interviewed who lost his son to a pill made with fentanyl that he bought off of Snapchat. I think he actually got it for free from a Snapchat drug dealer and had it delivered to his house. So he is actually working on a separate bill called Sammy's Law, which will allow us better monitoring on our kids' devices. But he also for COSA, for the Kids Online Safety Act. So he was doing lobbying with a lobbyist who has been hired to help him meet with representatives and talk about these bills. So they just invited me along as a concerned parent. And so I didn't know what I was going into. I don't know what lobbying is. I'm just going to listen. And it actually was much less intimidating than I thought. They had set meeting times that they had coordinated ahead of time. And so we just stopped in on the Hill, they call it, which is where all the offices are, where senators are and members of the House. And we just went to our meeting times, and you usually don't get to meet with the representative themselves or the senator. You meet with one of their staffers, which is almost always like a 25-year-old guy like that. So I feel like who we end up meeting with, or even like the front desk like person, but they're just there to field your thoughts and bring it over to the representative. So, I found it to be much less intimidating. It really was just, we're here to talk about the Kids Online Safety Act and this other bill. And what do you know about it already? And they would, let us know if they know a little or a lot about it. And we would fill in some gaps or tell a story about what happened. So with this dad I was with, he would tell the story of his son and then be like, with this bill passed, my son may still be alive today. And so just an effective way to show how this law is really needed. So I was tagging along that first time. The second time I went to an event in DC and I was at a conference, and the last day of the conference was an advocacy day. And so we joined into groups. They gave us some documents, some talking points on the Kids Online Safety Act. And then we just knocked on doors, which is also something you can do. You can just knock on the door of a representative at their local office in your district or in DC and say, is someone available to talk about the Kids Online Safety Act or online safety legislation or whatever? And we got maybe half of the offices had someone available. And we just said, thank you so much for meeting with us. And there was a survivor, a sexual exploitation survivor, and she talked about that. And then we kind of explained what the bill is. And you don't have to be an expert in the bill, though. You just have to go there and say, I'm really worried about my kids online. I know that there's elements of this bill that will really help protect them. What are you working on to keep kids safe online? Make it like a conversation. And what are they doing for you in this area? Yeah. And so and then the third time I had made a meeting with my representative from my district for the first time. I got to meet with her legislative director. And so he was very familiar with the Kids Online Safety Act, says that is a priority. And what you want from your representative is for them to co-sponsor a bill. It's basically indicating that they'll vote yes if it gets put for a vote. So that way the leader in the House can be like, okay, if I do put this for a vote and we use floor time for that, I'll have 300 votes or something potentially. And so you want a co-sponsorship from your representative in the House. And so that's the ask. That's when you're leaving the meeting, you're like, okay, so when can I hear, or we really would love a co-sponsorship. That's the call to action that you want to get out of it. And I think on a local level for just a regular parent, you can find out go to house.gov. If you don't know who your representative is, put in your zip code and you find out who your representative is. And then they have an office in DC and an office in your district. So it should be within, 50 miles. It depends on how rural of an area you're in. But, and then you can reach out and set a meeting, or you can just show up and be like, I want to talk to somebody about this topic. And so that's a really amazing way. If we had, God, even 100 people across the nation doing that, or if you have 10 people in your district doing that, it makes a big difference on these issues.
That's so cool to hear that that individual level of engagement can be impactful. Because I think a lot of people feel like it's not like I'm one person, and
No.
we think like big picture, like I'm one of however many in the United States.
Yeah.
But so it's really cool to hear that that individual level can be impactful.
Most people aren't doing it. So you actually
Yeah.
stand out when you do it. And that means a lot to them. They're making really important decisions. That was like a light bulb moment for me when I first went to a school board meeting, because I was like, whoa, like they're making big decisions about things that affect our kids. Like, why aren't there more parents here?
Yeah.
It's like,
So, and
oh,
I think that would be a really cool thing for, I think, a lot of parents to hear about. Because I do
mhm.
think that, like, I know that I am a part of, me and my husband are part of our son's school parent teacher organization.
Yeah,
And I think that a lot of parents, their understanding of like, how can we make an impact for our child's individual school or school district? I think it typically ends kind of there is with the
sure.
PTO. So
Hmm.
what are additional steps that parents can take, especially like, we were just chatting and I found out recently that my son has a ton of Chromebook time
Hmm.
within his school day.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I'm trying to explore is how can I be more vocal about my concerns and what I want to see from not just his individual teacher, because I don't want to be a thorn in his teacher's side.
Hmm.
Um, I want for there to be some accountability across administration
Yeah.
within my school district.
Yeah. So talking to the teacher, obviously step one, and you did that, but they just have very little. There, a lot is expected of them regarding the device use.
Yeah, and it's a resource
And
issue.
yeah, so I first went to my principal and emailed with concern about the device use, how much time they were spending, what they were getting access to on there, the ads, like inappropriate ads, just a bunch of things that were concerning to me. She pushed me to the district guy, the tech guy at my district. So there's a tech team or a tech person at your district level that you can work directly with on tech related issues. So I had my concerns. I had specific questions. We ended up having a phone call maybe a year ago. He was pretty willing to hear my concerns and give me information about what they're using to monitor and what they're using, what standards they're going off of for screen time and things like that. But the problem comes when you're not satisfied with the responses. Like, sort of, what do you do from there? And so you obviously have school board meetings. I'd never been to one before, but they released the agenda ahead of time. And I found out right around this time that they were talking about phones at schools. And so I was like, okay, that's something that I'm also worried about, with the kids having really like a lot of access to smartphones during schools and not good regulation around that. If there's an item on the agenda, you can go to the board meeting and make a public comment on that item when it comes to that time in the meeting. And I'm sure this is probably the case across school board meeting standards, but you have to like fill out a little form at the beginning or before that time comes to let them know you have a public comment on that agenda item. And school board meetings are intimidating. Like, you have 3 minutes to make your comment. Everyone's staring at you. You're
Yeah.
being live streamed. It's just like, I'm like losing my breath talking about it because it's so nerve wracking. But like, and then when you bring up comment on an agenda item, that's good because they then are going to discuss it and they'll take your comment into account, hopefully. And so that's when you can talk about, your issues with the amount of screen time or whatever your issues are. You can also make a comment on anything at all right in the beginning of the meeting. So the last meeting I went to a couple of weeks ago, the iPads was not on the agenda, but I just wanted to make a public comment because of what I had experienced with my daughter having access to on her school issued device. And so I used that 3-minute time. And then I had another mom come and sort of follow along with. So I talked about my experience, and then she requested that at the next board meeting, we put this on the agenda to kind of have a better discussion about it. Because if it's not on the agenda, you just say what you're going to say, and then like they move
Yeah.
on, they don't respond, which is like, I don't love the process because it's not collaborative, but it's on the record and hopefully they heard me. What I've learned about my school board is I'm a little bit unhappy with how things are working. One example is because I attended the board meeting, I watched them celebrate the fact that they had moved SEL, social and emotional learning, onto the iPads. And they were so excited about that. And I was like, what world
How
am
does
I
that
in?
even happen?
I don't know. Like, why are we celebrating this? And so that's just for me, I looked at the board members. I'm like, this is not the people I want. Like some of these people celebrating things like this is not what I want on my school board. So I did a little research on who's running for school board, and I support this other woman, and I put her sign, I had her bring a sign over, and it's in my yard, and then I'll vote for her to replace one of the other school board members. So if the school board members or whoever elected in your for anything isn't making decisions that you agree with, like vote for somebody else. And then there's also like we have more rights than we think when it comes to, let's talk about school issued devices. Like parents have a right to our kids to receive a safe education. And if you feel that the iPad use is unsafe for them, just the amount of time, like there's parents telling me their kids have neck aches and headaches when they come home from school because of how much time they're on there. Like that's a medical issue, and you should absolutely be able to opt out or ask for less time to be spent. Like, what is it that you want your kid to have in their experience with the devices? Do you want them to not use them at all? Do you want to 30 minutes? Like, request that and give some research to back that up, or give some of your personal experience. I put my email, because I did opt out entirely of school issued devices, and I sent that email to my principal, the tech guy of the district, and all of the school board members. I put that email template on my website under resources, scrollingtodeath.com/resources. So you can borrow from that. It has a lot of good research. Or if you're just wanting to know more about what they're doing to protect your kids on the devices, I put 7 questions that you can send them to your principal, or you can include school board members. It'll get sent to your district anyway. 7 questions about what they're doing to keep your kids safe on the devices. But then the question is like, what if you're not satisfied?
Yeah.
Like, and just be brave enough to say no, like say, I'm not comfortable with this. They may push back, but be really strong in that. And I'm working with a bunch of parents who have all opted out of devices at schools, and an attorney and some different people on like a bigger campaign to try to support parents with the school device issues. I recommended to Bark to be like, can you guys make a school safe device? Because the devices they're using at school are not safe, and they're actually like considering it. So I'm trying to like give parents some actual resources and backing around this topic. But hopefully that was helpful, that like go to your principal, go to your district, go to school board meetings, vote people in that you support and that support your thoughts around this.
How have things, I mean, I'm sure that they're still kind of in progress, but with your daughter, with the process of like you opting out for your daughter, how have things been since then? What does that look like for y'all?
So my son is in second and my daughter's in third. So in second grade, the day that I doubled down, like I opted out, they said that's not possible. I said, no, you need to, it's not safe. Like, because basically, if listeners don't know, I checked my daughter's iPad and scrolled through YouTube, and within like a minute, a self-harm video came up showing her how to cut her skin and telling her that hurting herself is easy. And so that was it. Like, I was like, this is insane. Like, if I can find that in 1 minute, not find it, like it got served to me. You're telling me that all these other children aren't in harm's way with the amount of time they spend on there. So my son's in second grade, they pulled it out of the room. Like once I doubled down, he has not had access to his device at all. He's fine with it. He says he just gets to read a book most of the time, which is not like the ideal ending solution. Like if they're doing a math game on the iPads, like he should get a math sheet. Right now is like an interim time where the district has said that they're working on a longer term comprehensive plan for opting out. And it may not be possible, but they're working on it. And so that's been a couple weeks. I followed up. They said they're still working on it and they need another week. But what it's looking like is that maybe they're creating an actual plan. And if there is an actual documented plan, that I'm telling everybody in the school, like, hey, there's a plan to opt out, especially parents in kindergarten and TK, 4-year-olds. These parents are like, I don't want them playing these games.
Yeah. I mean, my son was in kinder when COVID hit, and he had no personal device before that. And then, they sent everyone home with an iPad. And I think he did like 2 weeks of like virtual school, and then the school year just wrapped up on its own. And then we actually homeschooled him for the next 2 years because there was so much back and forth with schools being open, then closed, then open, then closed. And I worked full time. I was like, I can't get a first grader into a Zoom meeting every 30 minutes, like, and
Yeah.
be doing my job. I can't do
Right.
that. So we just homeschooled him.
Yeah.
And honestly, I remember thinking like, by the time that we get him back into school, like this will all, like, we'll have moved on
I
and get
know.
back to like regular
Yeah.
teaching methods. And so it's been really surprising for me that like this is the way that it's evolved. I thought it would go the other direction. And so now, I mean, I have my younger daughter who just turned 3, and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, in 2 years she would be going into kinder.
Hmm.
And like the thought of like a 5-year-old using an iPad is like wild to me at this point, because even again, when I think back to how, like when my son was 5, 6 years ago,
Hmm.
YouTube was so different. There was no YouTube shorts. There were like,
Hmm.
you had to almost try to find videos that were like uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
now it's just like, that's like every fourth video, there's something concerning.
I know. I
And
know.
it's, and so to think that like kindergartners are going into that landscape in this point in time, it's just wild to me.
Yeah, it feels really wrong. And I think most parents are like coming to and realizing that that's bad. They just don't know that they can, either they don't know how much time the kids are spending on it, and that a lot of teachers are like, okay, if you finish early, you can use it. Like just really using it as like a fill the time kind of thing. And those teachers, nothing against those teachers, they probably don't realize that the kids can access really inappropriate things. And just the effects of all that screen time on the kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, my third grader, that one has been a little harder. She's in a GATE class, so like a little bit more like gifted academic, whatever class, which apparently is more screen time. I didn't really understand that. So the teacher will email me in this meantime and say, like, they have a math quiz. It's like 7 minutes, should be like 7 minutes. And is that okay if she uses the device for that? And I'll say, yeah, I'll say yes. So that's been during, actually, there's our parent teacher conferences were just last week, which was helpful because I was able to get in front of the teachers one on one and be like, okay, I'm not trying to make more work for you. I appreciate your flexibility. I'm really hopeful that the school district will provide you with more resources on how to deal with this, because I know it's different. It's hard having to have
Yeah.
one kid have a separate plan. Yeah, but you're right that we really went all in during COVID because we had to with technology. And then we didn't go back
Back
to
out.
normal. No, we just kept using it and I mean, there's schools where they're sending it home with the kid after school in like kindergarten or first grade, which
Yeah.
no, thank you. I don't want that thing here.
No, those are some really great starting points for a lot of parents, because it feels like overwhelming. Like,
Yeah.
what the heck can I even do? Like, like I have a large platform and I can like
Mhm.
share information, and I can, I feel like there are some things that I can do to utilize social media in a different way. But I
Mhm.
think that for most parents, it's like, well, I'm just me at my kid's school. Like, what leverage do I have? So I think that
Mhm.
those were all really great little nuggets of like impactful option.
Yeah. And there's like bigger online safety legislation discussions, right? Like trying to get the companies to make the platforms safer, social media platforms, all this. Like even Apple iMessage is encrypted and can be a really problematic space for kids. Like there's all those problems, and it's not really for like a normal parent to track on all of that. Like if you're interested in it, like yes, please just contact your rep and that kind of thing. But it's also very confusing because you have big tech like not only lobbying against these bills like Kids Online Safety Act, but putting out media articles in major media outlets that are trying to say the bill is censorship and the bill is bad for LGBTQ plus kids,
Yeah.
like which is all
Freedom of
untrue.
speech.
Yeah, freedom of speech issues, and you'll see that like if you Google Kids Online Safety Act, you're going to see a lot of conflicting things. That's what I've been trying to do with interviews, is like bringing on people to be like, okay, so why specifically is this not a censorship bill? Why specifically is this actually not bad for LGBTQ plus kids? If you want to learn more about the Kids Online Safety Act, which is like has the best bet of passing this year, even if not hopefully next year, but that's the one you should put your attention on if you're a parent and you're concerned and you want the platforms to have some liability to keep our kids safe, like at all. Listen to a couple of the recent interviews where we talk about COSA. And if you agree, and I don't see why you wouldn't, just contact your representative. Like that will help a lot. But yeah, when you bring it back to the local level, I just think if we have parents in school districts across the country just emailing districts and being like, hey, like, why is my kid getting so much screen time? Why is all their information, like, why are they setting up Gmail accounts that Google now has all their information from the age of 5? Like,
And
are we not worried about that?
yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of parents who have contacted me and said things that like their kid has utilized a Gmail account to create a social media account that they weren't even aware of because they haven't allowed their child to have social media. And I shared recently in a post that like I was really frustrated because I felt like I have done so much work to moderate and manage and bring our screen time down as a family after the pandemic. And it was like, it took a lot of effort. And so then to then send my son back to school and have him like triple his screen time from one day to the next, I was just like, oh, this is so frustrating because I feel like for me as a parent, I'm doing what I can or what I know to do. But it feels like there's only so much I can do.
Yeah.
And is it a great place to be as a parent?
No. And a lot of, when I post about things like this, a lot of people will say, well, homeschool, get your kid out of public school, homeschool.
Yeah, that's not a viable option for everyone.
Well, and like, if everyone just gives up and doesn't fight back for what's better for our kids, then it's going to continue being this way. But if parents actually stand up and say, not that like I pay your salaries thing, but like this is, you have a right to like a safe education, and we don't find these devices to be safe. In fact, these devices were all built for adults. We're trying to tack on parental controls and filters and stuff that aren't working well, and they're not safe. And so we have a right to that. And if we don't fight for it, then it's never going to happen. And so can I send my kids to private school starting January 1? Sure. I'm in the process of applying, but I don't want to give up on this because even if I do end up pulling my kids out, I want other kids to have the opportunity to have a safer education. So
because it becomes like a social economic issue where if there isn't that pressure, then, the kids that are at most risk receive the most exposure.
Yep. It's not fair. So a coordinated campaign of parents all over the country just pushing back, like you talking to your teacher, but then bringing it one level higher to your principal and maybe CCing a couple board members being like, hey, 3 hours of screen time a day is unhealthy for my child. And here's some research to support that. And I would like to have a discussion about how we can minimize that time. Maybe if 2 other parents send a similar email like that, even just you do it, but if you get other parents on board too, that's always helpful. But that could make a change across your entire maybe grade or school. If you check the board agenda for the board meetings, if they're talking about iPads, or just go in with a public comment in the beginning and just get it on their radar. Like those are things that will actually make changes because you're a parent talking about it and they have to listen to you.
Yeah.
And it's important. It's important. God, I don't know. This was so not me a year ago. I was under the radar, not on social media. I was I'm just living my life. I don't care about politics. I'm just this is not my thing. But now I'm everybody speak up. Everybody's we need to protect our kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that this was all super helpful. And it was helpful for me. So I hope it's
good
for others.
Thank you, Andrea, for that conversation. And we are going to include a bunch of resources in the episode notes. And I am going to bring Andrea again on soon to have other chats related to screen time or screens in schools or whatever is happening in the lives of parents. So, Andrea, thank you so much. I appreciate you questioning me today.
Thanks for all of the great information. It was really, really helpful for me.
You're so welcome.